Hell Let Loose has an engineering problem. Let's talk about it. The building of nodes and structures such as garrisons, AT guns, repair stations, defences, all rely on supplies. When it comes to nodes and red zone garrisons, I think we've all become familiar with the redeploy loop. Place your blueprints, redeploy, come in as support and build up your nodes. Or place your supplies in the red zone, redeploy and switch roles with someone else so that they can drop their box and build a red zone garrison. And when it comes to defenses, these are an entire aspect of the game that just goes entirely forgotten outside of a novelty, the offensive game mode, or an Imber base. So can and should these issues, if you see them as issues, be resolved? Hell Let Loose is primarily a game about communication. Working with your squad and team to get resources flowing and garrisons built are a crucial part of the game that right now has an unnecessary friction to get going. And I personally would love to see more structures such as defenses being built in a typical warfare game mode, because they add variety and flair to the game. When a typical choke point has been blocked off with tank traps or barbed wire and has to be destroyed or alternative routes found, or a well-placed barricade providing additional cover on an objective, this to me is compelling gameplay that adds to the overall experience. So, what's the solution? I believe that with one small change we can be rid of the redeploy loop, see a greater number of buildables on the battlefield, and allow the engineer class to actually utilize their full range of abilities rather than just be a glorified anti-tank class with a satchel. Give the first engineer class a supply crate, same as the support role. They will then be free to build up their own nodes. Commanders begging for nodes should be given a reprieve because the only thing stopping an engineer from building their nodes is themselves. They will then be free to whip up a barricade, barbed wire or tank trap with ease without having to rely on an external supply source. They will also be able to provide the squad an additional supply crate for things like AT guns and red zone garrisons, something that experienced squads have been committing mass seppuku in order to achieve. With this change alone, I think we could remove a lot of the friction between nodes, garrisons and buildable structures. Tankers have been given supplies, artillery squads have supplies, so why not engineers who would arguably benefit the most from them given how many buildables they have? But there's one more change that I think would go a long way towards enhancing the logistics gameplay loop, especially when it comes to building defenses. When building a base, teams will usually attempt to fortify the second to last objective, particularly in the offensive game mode. In order to achieve this, you will see troops running supply runs in trucks and dropping supplies all over the objective in order to spread out the boxes for structures to be built. More often than not, you will run into situations where you can't quite reach your supplies required to build what you want, or you eat through all the nearby supplies building up your bunker. In order to get around this, a change I would like to see is having the option to drop supplies into a garrison and then have those supplies be a usable resource for engineers to pull from within the 200-meter radius of the garrison. This would give engineers much greater freedom to build where they want, not just where the supply crates are, and work to enhance that logistics run gameplay loop. Alongside this, it needs to be far easier for structures to be built. They are way too picky about where they can and can't be placed, and you often have to run around trying to rotate and find the perfect pixel where you can place your structure. Buildables should just be given more freedom to ignore collision up to a certain point. These changes alone would go a long way to improving the current state of logistics and building structures in Hell Let Loose. However, there's one more thing that I think would help reduce some of the friction around nodes and resource generation. Nodes as resource generation is a slightly contentious point. In comp matches, nodes are built before the wall drops and the enemy aren't even allowed to dismantle them. And in pub matches, they can be attributed to a somewhat repetitive gameplay loop, especially with the current state where nodes are always placed in predictable locations either in main base or behind the second line, making them easy targets for recon squads and forcing engineers to repeat the same process again and again, match after match. My solution? Change it so that when a sector is captured, nodes are no longer destroyed, thereby giving engineers more flexibility to build in unpredictable locations, combating the repetitive recon gameplay loop. This, combined with giving them their own supply crate so they can easily rebuild their nodes if needed, would go a long way to reducing the friction that teams face when dealing with resource generation. So, what do you think? Would you like to see any changes to the logistics gameplay, and do you think squads having access to an additional supply crate would be a good thing? These are all just my opinions and an open platform for discussion more than anything. Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Check back in for more and catch us live on Twitch, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.